Hello everyone, I am Vibha Chauhan and welcome to Chauhan classes Funda Clear. So today I will explain class 8 Civics chapter 8 and the chapter is Confronting Marginalization. So in the last chapter we had understood what marginalization is, and we had seen that there is marginalization with two examples. And in this chapter we will discuss about how different communities, how different groups have confronted marginalization. So in this chapter we will discuss about different schemes, different laws, different policies that are introduced by the government of India against, you can say, for the protection against marginalization. So our first topic is invoking fundamental rights. Invoking fundamental rights. So you know that in the first chapter of civics we had discussed about fundamental rights, and there are 6 fundamental rights, as you know. So these fundamental rights, if there is any marginalized person or group, they can draw on with fundamental rights to the government. By first method is that they can show the injustice that are done to them, to the government, by these fundamental rights. And second is that they can insist the government to enforce these laws. The government has seen that there is marginalization, then they have to enforce these laws. So you can say that fundamental rights are very helpful for against protection against marginalization. And Article 15, that is under fundamental rights, are fundamental rights. Article 15 says that no citizen of India, no citizen of India shall be discriminated on the basis of sex, place, religion or place of birth. So you can say that for marginalized people, for marginalized, against marginalization, this is a very, you can say, achievement. There is a step for this. And second, you can say, second very important article is Article 17, that also comes under fundamental rights, and it says that abolition of untouchability, that is, there should not be any untouchability, the practice of untouchability, and that has, you can say, benefited the marginalized people, that are dalits, because dalits were untouchability, there was a practice of untouchability. But abolition, after the abolition of it, you can say, henceforth dalits can now do education, now they have access to the local facilities, you can say. So you can say that under fundamental rights there are many provisions that they are helpful to the marginalized people, and often government frames new laws, policies, schemes for protection against marginalization, you can say. So our second topic is laws for the marginalized. Laws for the marginalized. So you know that there are specific laws that are made generally for the marginalized, the scheduled caste, scheduled type, dalits in India, for protection, you can say, against marginalization. And you can say first is that hostels are being provided free, or you can say subsidized for the scheduled tribes, or you can say scheduled caste kids, you can say. So you can say that if a kid of scheduled caste, or you can say scheduled tribes has to study, then he can get a hostel with free, or you can say subsidized. And second is that very important is reservation policy, and this policy, you can say, is very important for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, you can say, because reservation policy, so you know that if there is exam in university and there are 100 seats, and in these 20 or 30, between 20 or 30 are reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, you can say. So you can say that reservation policy is reserved seats generally for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and even in scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, you can say, there are cut-off points. It is that all scheduled caste, all scheduled tribes are not allowed to enter that university. They have to secure well marks above that cut-off marks, and then they get, you can say, allowance to that university. And even to show their identity, to get the benefits of reservation policy, they have to show their tribal certificates. And if they show their tribal certificates, and that tribal which whichever caste they are belonging, whichever you can say caste, tribe or scheduled tribe they are belonging, and if that is under the list, under the government list, then they can get the benefits of reservation policy, you can say that. So you can say that there are laws, specific laws that are made for the marginalized. So our third topic is protecting the rights of dalits and Adivasis. Protecting the rights of dalits and Adivasis. So you know that there are being made laws that are for protection, that are for defend, you can say, for the good work. But in the negative point, if there is any marginalization, then there should be any laws, there should be any protection. So for this there are also made, you can say, policies, schemes, you can say there are made laws that are introduced by government of India. So first let us understand how this caste people, you can say low dalits, get benefits from those laws by understanding a case study, and that is of the village Jakmalgur. So Jakmalgur, there is you can say ritual that is once in a 5 year, and in that ritual there are 20 priests from different villages, and there is practice here that is a person from Dalit community, a person, you can say a Dalit community has been chosen, and a person from that Dalit community has to wash the feet of those priests and then take a bath from that same water. So you can say that is marginalization. Just because they are Dalit, they cannot do anything. So now is the turn, you can say now is the turn of Ratnam, whose father and you can say grandfather ancestors has been doing this work, but he refused because he was studying and saying that it was against his dignity. So he said that he would not do this, and the other village people, upper caste people, say that it was wrong, that he was just studying, he was thinking like that, and the whole family of, you can say, Ratnam was being socially boycotted, and one night, you can say, their hut was also set on fire, and then he went to the, you can say, government, you can say, to the police station and reported a file that his dignity, you can say, he was marginalized, and he filed his report on the basis of act, that was the act of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes prevention of atrocities of 1989. So you can see that after filing, the matter was set up, and they had to leave that village. They were set up elsewhere. So you can say that after studying this, after you can say listening this story, you know that there are laws by which people can, but in reality they have to face, you can say, boycottings, because in the same family, you see that in the same family, Ratnam, his family members were also not supporting, because they were in fear of upper caste people that they were working for. If they supported Ratnam, then they would, upper caste people would not, you can say, give wages to them, would not, you can say, hire his family members. So you can say that there are laws, specific laws. So our first topic is the Scheduled Caste and the Scheduled Tribes Act 1989, Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. So know that marginalized people there are many atrocities related to the marginalization, you can say. The people, the Dalits, you can say, basically we are studying about Dalits, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, there are many atrocities with them. So in 1989, this act was enacted, that is the Scheduled Caste and the Scheduled Tribes 1980 Act, and that was for the prevention of atrocities, because during the time of 1970s or 1980s, you can say, there were many, you can say, conflicts during that time, and during that time, for the marginalization, the Dalits were raising voice. They were saying that there has been so many atrocities, and many Dalits were not performing so-called rituals because they were against their dignity, they were derogatory to them. So for this law was enacted, and this law says, you can say, states that there should not be any marginalization, and it says that any humiliation, physical humiliation, or you can say mentally reprehensible, would be committed as a crime, would be seen as a crime by the government of India. And it says that first is that there should not be any practice of feeding, or you can say of drinking anything. Scheduled people, Dalit people would not eat any inedible thing or obnoxious thing, because you know that in many rituals of India there were many practice in which Dalits had to drink, had to, you can say, eat inedible things. And second is that you cannot make any Dalit, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe people, you can say, you cannot take off his or her clothes, or you cannot paint on his body, you can say, which are derogatory to them. You cannot make any practice that are derogatory to the dignity of that person. And third, on the other hand, you can say specifically for the women, if there is any person, if there should not be any, you can say, dishonor to the scheduled tribe and scheduled caste women. If a woman is belonging to the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe, then if anything happens to her by any other person, upper caste person, if anything, that is a humiliation, that is a dishonor to her, that would also be seen as a crime. So you can say that this is a prevention from atrocities 1989 Act. This is very, you can say, important, you can say. So our next topic is the scourge of manual scavenging. The scourge of manual scavenging, that was, you can say, a very worse, you can say, practice. So basically it was that there was given a duty to the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe people, that they had to clean the human, or you can say animal excreta or waste, and they had to do that work. And many tribal people many scheduled caste, Dalit people had to do work, and you know that this was affecting their health. After doing this work, they had no access to the temples, to the local facilities, and in the health it was also, they had been suffering from hazardous, you can say, hazardous diseases that were to their respiratory system, to their skin problems, to their eye, to their gas urinatory system. So for this, according to the, you can say, information surveys of Andhra Pradesh Safai Karmachari Andolan, that was an organization, and it said that more than 13 lakh Dalits were doing this work under more than 96 lakh private and government municipalities. This work they were doing. So for this, an act was enacted. That was Manual and Scavenging Act Prohibition, and it was enacted in 1993. But still, there were many scavengers that were doing this work. There were many scavengers that existed. So in 2003, seven organizations and some scavengers filed a PIL, as you know, public interest litigation, which we have already studied about. So they filed PIL, and after that the Supreme Court said that to the government, to the state and union government, that they have to found within 6 months whether the scavengers existed or not, and if they are existing, then they have to make their compensation, because there were many sufferings, you can say. So they had to make compensation, liberation and their rehabilitation. So you can say that they were the scourge of manual scavenging. That was a very worse and around 2013 it was, you can say, completely banned. So you can say that it was a recent case. So next topic is Adivasi demands and the 1989 Act. Adivasi demands and the 1989 Act. So the 1989 Act, that is very important for, you can say, Adivasi, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and Dalits. So-called Dalits, you know that Dalits who are called. So this act is very important in the matters of humiliation, mental reprehensible, as well as for the Adivasis on the basis of their lands. And in the last chapter, we had already seen that the tribal people, the Adivasis, never wanted to leave their forest, and they were forcibly, you can say, they had to leave forcibly their forest. So according to the 1989 Act, if their traditional land is taken away, then they can repossess by the government. By this act, the government will enact and they will repossess their land. So this act also says that the 1989 act also says that the land that is belonging to the tribal person, to Adivasi, cannot be sold to or bought by any non-tribal person. And C.K. Janu, who was an activist, said that most of the persons who are violating the land of the tribal people are the government itself. She said that the government itself is violating the lands of tribal persons. So she was saying that the government itself is disguising itself in the ways of timber merchant, paper mill workers, and is violating the land. You can say destroying the land of tribal people, destroying the forest that belong to the tribal persons, Adivasis, you can say. She was saying that government, because of those merchants, because of those workers, you can say value of that land was taken away. And she said that there should be compensation to those tribal persons, to those Adivasis, to those scheduled tribes whose land were taken away, whose traditional forests were taken away. So 1989 Act says that there is rehabilitation for those whose land are taken away. You can say that whose land are forcibly taken away, they can repossess. But if the land is destroyed, you can say by the government, then they can be rehabilitated by the government of India. So next and last topic of this chapter is conclusion. So the conclusion of this chapter is what? What do you think? So the conclusion of this chapter is, we can say that is law that is written on paper is not on reality, is always not on reality. As you have seen that there are many policies like reserved seats in universities, you can say reserved seat for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. There are many laws like 1989 Act, but they are written only on papers, you can say. In reality, there are very less, you can say there are very less adaptation, because the people themselves, the citizens of India themselves, have to see the matter of marginalization. They have to see the whole matter, because the marginalization, you can say that, is very worse for this society, for a democratic country. So the conclusion of this chapter is, the people have confronted marginalization because the desire for dignity, self-respect is not new. It was from history, you can say. During the colonial period, you can say that there was desire for dignity, self-confidence, you can say, self-respect. So you can say that the conclusion of this chapter is, people have confronted marginalization and because of the desires. So this is all about the chapter. I have discussed all topics and subtopics, and I'll be covering further chapters in further videos. So thank you very much.